Welcome to my official 2024 Big Ten predictions video. In this video, I will be predicting the Big Ten conference standings from top to bottom for 2024. And at the end of this video, I will be giving my 2024 conference championship prediction for the Big Ten. And let's start off all the way at the bottom of the Big Ten. I have Purdue coming in with a 2-10 record and a 1-8 conference record. There are some reasons for optimism for this team moving forward. Hudson Card returns at quarterback, and he's one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the Big Ten. They also returned their star running back who ran for over 800 yards last season. So they have some guys back offensively, but they also lost their two best wide receivers, Deion Burks and TJ Sheffield. They add Cam Brown and CJ Smith from the portal who should help them offensively. But Purdue gave up 30 points a game last season defensively, and they lost some big pieces defensively. They lost edge rusher Nick Scorton, who was one of the best defensive players in the Big Ten. They brought in some solid transfers, including four-star cornerback Nyland Green from Georgia, and he should be one of the top players for this defense. They do return three of their top four tacklers from last season. Purdue went 4-8 last season in Ryan Walters' first year as the head coach, and I do think Purdue lost a lot of talent, and I think they will struggle in 2024. They are in a much better spot heading into 2024 than they were heading into 2023 though. But regardless, I still think this team has to show a lot more growth if this team wants to win games again. They only returned half of the starters from last season, and they lost some important pieces to the team. So I do have Purdue at 2-10 with a 1-8 conference record. At number 17, I have Illinois. Just like Purdue, there are reasons for optimism offensively. They returned Luke Altmaier at quarterback, who missed the final 3 games of last season. They lost their top 2 wide receivers, but they returned 3 starting offensive linemen from last season. They have a balance of returning starters. They returned 5 starters offensively and 5 defensively. Next season is crucial for Bret Bielema in Illinois, because Bret Bielema might be in the hot seat if Illinois has another struggling season. I do like Luke Altmaier at quarterback, and they do have a rising star at running back. They also have options at wide receiver, including the transfer addition of Zachary Franklin. The defense took a huge step down in 2023, and they lost first-team All-Big Ten selection Jerzon Newton. There is a path to bowl eligibility. They have a pretty manageable 4-game stretch to end the season against Minnesota, Michigan State, Rutgers, and Northwestern. But I'm personally just a bit higher on the other teams in the Big Ten, and I expect Illinois to struggle in 2024 defensively. And I do have them at 3-9 with a 1-8 conference record. At number 16, I have UCLA, and I have them going 3-9 with a 1-8 conference record. I think it's going to be a tough transition for UCLA heading into the Big Ten. They only returned 4 starters on defense, and they have a whole new coaching staff. I really like what they have offensively with Ethan Garbers and some of their top wide receivers back, and TJ Harden is a rising star at running back. They returned multiple offensive linemen, and I do think the offense could be pretty good. But the defense is destined to take a huge step down. They only returned 3 of their top 12 tacklers from last season, and I don't think they have the defense to be competitive in the Big Ten. A tough schedule doesn't help either. They have a 3-game stretch against LSU, Oregon, and Penn State that will be brutal. Deshaun Foster and the UCLA Bruins are in for a tough year 1 in the Big Ten. At number 15, I have Minnesota, and I have them going 4-8 with a 1-8 conference record. I think Minnesota is steps ahead of the teams below them. The transfer portal addition of quarterback Max Brosmer is very interesting. He's an FCS transfer that has thrown for over 8,000 career passing yards. Minnesota also has one of the best returning running backs in the Big Ten, Darius Taylor. They returned 4 starters on the offensive line, and they returned standout receiver Daniel Jackson. The new defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman takes over a very experienced group of defenders. Minnesota has 8 returning starters back defensively, but the loss of Tyler Nubin in the secondary will hurt them. Last season was PJ Fleck's first losing season at Minnesota since 2017, and I could see Minnesota definitely making a bowl game, but I wasn't brave enough to pick 6 wins on the schedule. The schedule doesn't get any easier in 2024. So I do have Minnesota going 4-8 with a 1-8 conference record. At number 14, I have Indiana, and I have them going 5-7 with a 2-7 conference record. Indiana is a very interesting team. They completely overhauled their roster with a bunch of new transfers, and they have a year 1 head coach that came from James Madison, Curt Cignetti. And I do like the hire of Curt Cignetti. Curt Cignetti has a great track record, and Indiana has one of the easier Big Ten schedules next season. Their schedule could realistically set them up for a 6-0 start to the season. They brought in 31 transfers, and they brought in 4-star quarterback from Ohio, Curtis Warwick, who should be a big upgrade at quarterback for Indiana in 2024. It's really hard for me to predict this team because more than half of the starters in 2024 will be new starters, but they do return some key players like receiver Donovan McCulley and Linnell Carr Jr. on the defensive line. And I like Curtis Work at quarterback. I think he was a great addition. And I also like Kurt Cignetti at head coach. And I think the schedule could set them up for a bowl season. But I do have them going 5-7 with a 2-7 conference record, just missing out on a bowl game. At number 13, I have Northwestern. I have them going 5-7 with a 3-6 conference record. Northwestern surprisingly won 8 games in 2023. Absolutely nobody had high expectations for David Braun's first year at Northwestern. And once again, nobody has high expectations for this team in 2024. But I'm actually a bit higher on them than most people might be. I think they have great upside defensively with 7 starters back on defense. I have questions offensively, but they returned their star running back and multiple playmakers at wide receiver. They lost Brendan Sullivan at quarterback, who had a solid 2023 season, but they added transfer portal quarterback Mike Wright from Mississippi State, so we will see what he can do. Even if the offense isn't that good, I think the defense has the potential to set them up for a solid bowl season. They have a manageable schedule, and I do think they managed to win multiple games in the Big Ten. But once again, I have another team just missing out on a bowl game, and I have Northwestern at 5-7 with a 3-6 conference record. At number 12, I have Maryland, and I have Maryland going 6-6 with a 3-6 conference record. Maryland has won 8 games the past 2 seasons, but I do expect them to take a step back in 2024. They lost their quarterback to the NFL, Tualia Tagovailoa. NC State transfer MJ Morris and Billy Edwards Jr. will have to battle for that starting role in 2024. The offense has some important weapons back, like running back Roman Hemby, tight end Preston Howard, and receivers Caden Prather and Ty Felton. But the offensive line lost 4 starters. The defense for Maryland should be strong again, though. They were solid last season, only giving up 4.86 yards a snap. They returned many guys in the front 7 defensively, but they will have to reload in the secondary. I think they will have a solid team again, and even with Tualia Tagovailoa leaving for the NFL, I expect Maryland to still make a bowl game in 2024. So I have Maryland at 6-6 with a 3-6 conference record. At number 11, I have Michigan State, and I have Michigan State going 7-5 with the 4-5 conference record. And I'm a lot higher on Michigan State than most people are. I think they will win right away with the new head coach Jonathan Smith from Oregon State. I think he was a great hire for this team. And they brought over Aiden Childs at quarterback, who has big potential. They also brought over Jack Velling, who was one of the best tight ends in the Pac-12 last season from Oregon State. Michigan State lost a lot to the portal, and they only returned 9 starters from last season. There are big questions with this team, but I really like what Jonathan Smith did in the portal. And I think quarterback Aiden Childs is due for a breakout season at quarterback. Nate Carter is also a very underrated running back in the Big Ten, and he will be back. They have some young guys on defense. Jordan Hall had 67 tackles and 4.5 sacks, and he's back. They do play Oregon, Ohio State, Iowa, and Michigan, but outside of those 4 games, I think every game on the schedule is definitely winnable. I really like this Michigan State team moving forward, and I have Michigan State going 7-5 with the 4-5 conference record in 2024. At number 10, I have Iowa. I have them going 7-5 with the 5-4 conference record. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me for having Iowa this low, but I don't expect Iowa to have another double-digit win season. They did make the Big Ten championship game last season, and Iowa returns 8 starters defensively. They will have a top 10 defense in college football, but I don't have high expectations for that offense, even after returning Cade McNamara at quarterback. They also returned tight end Luke Lachey from injury. It will be big to have him back, but I think the offense is going to struggle with their new offensive coordinator, and I think they take a step back. They no longer play in a weak Big Ten West division, and I just do not trust this offense. They could easily win double-digit games again, and it wouldn't surprise me. The schedule actually isn't too difficult, but I think teams like Iowa State, Wisconsin, and Nebraska are all going to take steps forward in 2024, and Iowa plays those teams. And I'm definitely buying stock in those teams. They also play at Ohio State, which will be a loss, and they play Washington, and Washington is being underrated in my opinion. They didn't bring in any great transfers, and they have the worst transfer portal class in the Big Ten. I think they will be a good team, and I don't think Iowa could go any worse than 7-5. I'm honestly picking the floor for them, but they won 5 one-possession games last season, and they got completely shut down in their bowl game against Tennessee, losing 35-0. I think Iowa is going to lose to the better offensive teams in the Big Ten next season. I really don't have faith in them offensively, so I do have Iowa going 7-5 with the 5-4 conference record. At number 9, I have Washington. I have Washington going 8-4 with the 5-4 conference record. Washington is guaranteed to take a step back, but I do think people are sleeping on Jedd Fisch in this Washington squad. They lost all 11 starters on offense and they only returned 2 starters on defense. But Jedd Fisch brought in the third best transfer portal class in the Big Ten, and he brought in some impact transfers. Will Rogers is an under the radar quarterback. He was a transfer from Mississippi State and he was very good in 2021, throwing for nearly 5,000 yards with a completion percentage of 73.9. But since then, he has taken massive steps back. But he is Mississippi State's all-time passing leader, and he is the only quarterback in SEC history with over 1,000 career completions. Will Rogers has taken big steps down, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did completely overexceed expectations in 2024 with a better offense around him. They added Arizona running back Jonah Coleman, who was a huge pickup in my opinion, and they added receiver Jeremiah Hunter, who was also a big pickup for them. Washington brought in some solid transfers, and I don't think they will be a bad team defensively. I have high expectations for Will Rogers in that Washington offense, and that is exactly why I have them winning 8 games. I think they will take a step back offensively, but they still have great playmakers on that team. And I do have Washington going 8-4 with a 5-4 conference record. At number 8, I have Wisconsin. I have them going 8-4 with a 6-3 conference record. Luke Fickell went 7-6 in his first year with Wisconsin. It was a pretty disappointing year one to some people, and the offense did struggle. But that doesn't mean Wisconsin won't take a step in the right direction moving forward. I believe in Luke Fickell, and he is one of the better coaches in the Big Ten in my opinion, and his track record at Cincinnati was very impressive. The offense has some questions once again heading into 2024. They picked up the transfer portal quarterback Tyler Van Dyke from Miami, who will definitely need to cut back on mistakes. They lost their star running back to the NFL, but Chez Meluzzi is back from injury, and he averaged 6 yards a carry last season, which was pretty good. Their top 2 wide receivers combined for over 1,300 receiving yards, and they are both back. They add some solid transfers to help with the depth in the linebacker core, and the defense should be very solid. Their season could ultimately be determined by how Tyler Van Dyke plays at the quarterback position, and that means he will need to cut back on turnovers. But they have some guys back, 10 starters to be exact, and I think Wisconsin takes a small step forward in 2024 with Luke Fickell. I have Wisconsin going 8-4 with a 6-3 conference record in 2024. At number 7, I have Rutgers. I have Rutgers going 8-4 with a 6-3 conference record. Rutgers should be a pretty solid team in 2024. They return one of the best running backs in the Big Ten who is extremely underrated, and that guy is Kyle Monangai, who ran for over 1,000 yards last season. They still have massive concerns at the quarterback position. Even with the questionable quarterback play, this team should still be very good, and they are a potential sleeper in the Big Ten. They do have a very manageable schedule though, and they don't play Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State. They returned 14 starters from last season. Rutgers held their opponents to 21 points a game last season, and they actually return all Big Ten players at every level defensively. They will have one of the top defenses in the Big Ten, and people need to keep an eye on this team. If they manage to have an above-average passing game, they could possibly be a sneaky team and compete for a college football playoff berth. Ultimately, I don't have those type of expectations for the passing game, but I'm still pretty high on Rutgers, and I have them at a solid 8-4 record with a 6-3 conference record. At number 6, I have Nebraska. I have Nebraska going 9-3 with a 6-3 conference record. Nebraska hasn't made a bowl game in nearly a decade, but I think it is about time that drought ends in 2024, and I think Nebraska is going to overexceed their expectation and go over on their win total. I believe in Matt Rule. The defense should be one of the best not just in the Big Ten but in the country, and they managed to bring back their defensive coordinator Tony White, who could easily get a head coaching job anywhere else. This is a defense that only gave up 18 points a game last season, and they will be better next year. The running game was very good despite having a lot of injuries. The passing game was atrocious. They couldn't even get one quarterback to throw 1,000 yards last season. And get this, they threw 16 interceptions to 10 touchdowns. That is insane. I don't see the passing game being that bad in 2024. Five-star freshman Dylan Raiola doesn't have to be perfect. He just needs to throw more touchdowns than interceptions, and this is easily a bowl team. They have 14 starters back from last season, and I do have high expectations for Nebraska football in 2024. They went 5-7 with 5 one-possession losses last season. I don't see Matt Rule in Nebraska having another season like that. So I do have Nebraska at 9-3 with a 6-3 conference record for 2024. At number 5, I have Michigan. I have Michigan going 9-3 with a 7-2 conference record. Michigan lost their head coach and only returned 5 starters for 2024. But Sharon Moore has coached in big games for this team already, and he will be that guy to take over the role as the new head coach for Michigan football. They're coming off a national championship victory, and the defense was extremely deep last season. They returned one of the best cornerbacks in the country, Will Johnson, and they returned 2 Big Ten all-defensive tackles, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, and they will be a force up front for Michigan. They should have one of the top defenses in the country, and the offense returns All-American tight end Colston Loveland, and Donovan Edwards is back at running back. The questions come at the quarterback position, because we are still not sure who that number 1 quarterback is going to be. But if Michigan figures it out offensively at quarterback, and they have a decent passing game, they could be a dangerous team in the Big Ten. I expect Alex Orji to be that number 1 quarterback, and we've seen him make some athletic plays, running the ball at least, but he is a very unproven passer. The offense has big questions, and they have 5 new starters on the offensive line. But the rushing game should be great with Edwards, Mullins, and Alex Orji if he is quarterback 1. Michigan will be a very interesting team to watch. I think they will probably start the season off slow, but I think they will have a great second half of the season, and I actually have them beating Oregon at home. And I do have Michigan going 9-3 with a 7-2 conference record. At number 4, I have USC. I have USC going 8-4 with a 7-2 conference record. And I actually have USC ahead of Michigan in the Big Ten standings. I don't think USC will be a better team than Michigan, but I think USC manages to upset Michigan on the road early in the season. USC has a bye week before that game, and I still think Michigan will be figuring it out offensively early in the season. Michigan could easily dominate USC because they are the way more physical team, but I like what USC has offensively, and I think they will be a bit better defensively because of the new coaching staff changes and the new transfers. USC completely revamped the defensive coaching staff, and they actually have one of the most elite coaching staffs in the country. They hired former NFL and high-profile FCS coaches, and they brought over Deontay Lynn, who produced an excellent UCLA defense last season. Miller Moss should have a breakout season at quarterback, and Zachariah Branch is going to go off for USC at wide receiver next season. And I think USC will have a solid year 1 in the Big Ten. I have seen all the jokes about Lincoln Riley in this USC team, but Lincoln Riley has won double-digit games every season until 2023, and I don't understand why some people say he is in the hot seat, because he's definitely not. I don't expect USC to have everything figured out defensively in 2024, but I think Lincoln Riley is taking a new approach to improve the defense, and over time I wouldn't be surprised if USC became a top contender in the Big Ten. And I do have USC going 8-4 with a 7-2 conference record. At number 3, I have Penn State, and I have Penn State going 10-2 with a 7-2 conference record. Penn State has to be one of the most predictable teams in college football every year because they go 10-2 just about every year with head coach James Franklin. But heading into 2024, Penn State has a lot of potential, and just maybe they can overexceed those 10-2 expectations. They return 11 starters and they have a very favorable schedule. Their biggest game is at home against Ohio State. The defense is one of the best in the country. The offense will need to take a step forward if they want to compete for a Big Ten championship. But they did hire the offensive coordinator from Kansas, which was a big hire, because Penn State managed only 5.1 yards of play in the Big Ten last season. More offensive weapons at wide receiver is crucial for Drew Allar's development, because he struggled a bit last season and he didn't have a great offense around him. He only completed 59.9% of his passes last season, and that's not going to cut it in the Big Ten in those big games. They added the former 5-star receiver from Ohio State, Julian Fleming, out of the portal, but they lost their best receiver, Keandre Lambert-Smith. They do return their tight end, Tyler Warren, who was second in receiving yards last season. And a big thing for this team is that they have one of the best running back rooms in the country, with both the Nick Singleton and Katron Allen coming back. The defense is a big strength, and they do have some offensive upside, but unfortunately, I think the lack of weapons at wide receiver will keep them from winning 11 or 12 games in 2024. And I think Ohio State will be too talented of a team, and I don't see Penn State beating Ohio State. Penn State also has road games at USC, Wisconsin, West Virginia, and Minnesota, and I see Penn State dropping one of those tough away games. And because of that, I have Penn State going 10-2 with a 7-2 conference record in 2024. At number 2, I have Oregon. I have them going 11-1 with the 8-1 conference record. And I have them being the Big Ten runner-up, which means they would lose in the Big Ten championship game. Dan Lanning has led Oregon to a 22-5 record in his first 2 seasons at Oregon. They really haven't won any big games though, and people have questions about how they are going to match up against teams like Michigan and Ohio State. But Dan Lanning is building a great foundation for the Oregon Ducks. He's brought in a top 5 2024 and 2025 recruiting class, and Oregon has the number 2 transfer portal class in the country right now. Oregon is already a great line of scrimmage team, and I think they are going to fit perfectly in the Big Ten. It's only a matter of time until Dan Lanning and Oregon starts winning those big games and they start winning championships. Dan Lanning has some great experience learning from guys like Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. Oregon will bring great offensive firepower to the Big Ten. They added one of the best quarterbacks in college football, Dillon Gabriel, to the roster, and they have a great receiving core with guys like Tez Johnson and Trayshawn Holden back, and also add the addition of 5-star transfer Evan Stewart. The defense returns great leaders in the front seven like Jeffrey Bossa and Jordan Burch, and they added multiple impact transfers in the secondary. Most notably Jabbar Muhammad, who made incredible plays for Washington last season. Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks are set up for a big year one in the Big Ten, and I think they have the team to go and win the Big Ten in year one. And I do have them beating Ohio State in the regular season at home, but I have them losing the rematch to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. So I have Ohio State at number 1, and I have them going 11-1 with the 8-1 conference record. And my prediction to win the Big Ten in 2024 is Ohio State. I think there is way too much pressure on Ryan Day at Ohio State, and because of that, I think Ryan Day will have this team ready to go in 2024. And they have the team that can go and win it all. The roster is incredibly talented. They return 9 starters defensively, and they add the best safety in the country, Caleb Downs, from the portal. The offense has some great weapons at wide receiver, with the Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, and the addition of 5-star freshman Jeremiah Smith. They added the best running back from the portal, Quinshon Judkins, and Ohio State has to have the best backfield in the country with Henderson and Judkins. The questions come on the offensive line and at the quarterback position. But I do think the offensive line should continue to develop with multiple starters back there, and I don't think the offensive line is a huge concern. And they added the transfer Will Howard from Kansas State, and I think he's definitely an upgrade from Kyle McCord. Will Howard is a lot more effective with his legs, and he has played the game for many seasons, so he has the experience. Chip Kelly will be running that offense, and he is one of the greatest offensive minds in college football over the last 15 years. I really like what this Ohio State team has, and I think the defense is the best in the country, and it might not even be close. Sorry, Michigan. I think the 3-year drought of losing to Michigan ends in 2024, and I think Ryan Day and Ohio State found their way back to the Big Ten championship. Ohio State struggled defensively for years, and he addressed that issue already, and now he's addressing the issue offensively. He's not shying away from the pressure, and 2024 could really be national championship or bust for Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State was a massive winner this offseason, but I'm excited to see how this team will perform from the fall all the way to January. And I do have them beating Oregon in the 2024 Big Ten championship game. But anyways, you guys let me know what you think about my standings for the Big Ten in 2024 down in the comments below. But that is going to do it for today's video. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you'll love this channel, because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing, and also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.